The silence in the clearing was absolute, broken only by the ragged, wet sound of my own breathing. The scent of crushed pine needles and iron-rich blood filled my nose. My blood. I clutched the small, cool vial in my palm, its glass surface slick with my sweat. The bond breaker. The final, desperate lie I carried. Jonah stood across from me. His alpha form a mountain of silver-furred fury. But his golden eyes were wide with a horror that had nothing to do with the battle just ended. He was staring at the tiny, sleeping form cradled in Erica's arms just behind me. Our daughter. The child whose existence he had just learned of in the worst possible way. "You kept her from me," he growled, the sound vibrating in the earth beneath my bare feet. "You hid my heir. You cast me out," I whispered, the words tearing from a throat raw from screaming. "You chose the lie over the bond." Benjamin's broken body lay nearby, a testament to Jonah's rage, but the real destruction was just beginning. Jonah took a step forward, his gaze locked on our child. "She is mine. The pack is hers." That's when I lifted the vial. His eyes snapped to it. Confusion then dawning, terrible. "She is mine," I said, my voice trembling with a strength I didn't know I had left. "And she will never know the bond that you so carelessly shattered. She will never feel the pull of a mate who could discard her like garbage. She will be free." I saw the exact moment he realized what I held. The bond breaker. Not for me, for her. To sever her from the moon's call, from the pack's pulse, from him, forever. His roar of denial shattered the silence, a sound of pure, primal agony. He lunged, but I'm getting ahead of myself. It didn't start with blood. It started with a scent. The first rule of surviving a pack gathering when you're the lowest wolf in the hierarchy is to be a ghost. I moved along the edges of the great hall, a tray of empty mead glasses slick in my hands, my eyes downcast. The air was thick with the smells of roasted meat, wood smoke, and dominant wolf. A musky, oppressive cocktail that made my stomach churn. Laughter boomed from the high table where Alpha Jonah sat, a sound like distant thunder. I didn't need to look to feel the weight of his presence. It was a constant pressure against my skin, a hum in my blood I'd spent a lifetime trying to ignore. "Move it, Nina, the Alpha's cup is dry." Joseph, the head steward, snapped his fingers near my ear. I flinched, the glasses clinking. "Yes, and for Moon's sake, try to look like you belong here. It's the founding feast, not a funeral." His lip curled, showing a hint of canine. He'd been riding me harder since my parents died, a subtle persecution everyone noticed and no one questioned. An orphaned, weak-blooded female was easy prey. I wove through the crowd, my gray dress blending with the stone walls. I was good at being invisible. It was my only defense. I focused on the flagstones, on the path to the kitchen, on the simple goal of not dropping the tray. That's when the scent hit me. It cut through the hall's cacophony of smells like a lightning strike, clean, sharp like winter air and aged whiskey with an undercurrent of pure, wild power. Alpha, but it was more than that. It was his scent, Jonah's, and it was close. Too close. I looked up, and my carefully constructed invisibility. He was standing directly in my path, having broken away from his beta's conversation. Jonah. In the flesh, not just an oppressive force at the head of the table. He was taller than I remembered from my rare, distant glimpses, his shoulders broad under a simple dark tunic. His black hair was cropped short, his jaw clean-shaven and strong. But it was his eyes that trapped me, a molten gold that seemed to see right through the walls I'd built, right down to the frantic rabbit beat of my heart. My feet rooted to the floor. The tray in my hands became a foreign object. The entire hall seemed to dim, the noise fading to a dull roar. All that existed was that scent and those eyes. He was looking at me with an expression I couldn't decipher. Not anger, not dismissal, A deep, intense scrutiny as if he was trying to solve a puzzle. "You," he said, his voice a low rumble that vibrated in my chest. "What's your name?" Panic, cold and sharp, lanced through me. He'd never spoken to me. He shouldn't even know I exist. I opened my mouth, but my voice had deserted me. Joseph materialized at my elbow, a sycophantic smile plastered on his face. "Alpha Jonah, this is just Nina. She serves in the kitchens. Apologies, she's simple and shy." "Nina, bow to your Alpha." A hot flush of shame burned my cheeks. Simple. I forced my head down, my gaze landing on Jonah's boots. "Alpha!" The silence stretched. I could feel his eyes on the crown of my head. The bond, the cursed, silent thread that had always faintly tugged in my soul towards him, suddenly pulled taut, singing a note so clear and painful it stole my breath. "Look at me, Nina." It wasn't a request. It was a command woven with alpha power, one my wolf, despite its weakness, couldn't refuse. My head lifted slowly. His gaze was even more devastating up close. There was a flicker in their gold depths, something like confusion or recognition. "Have we met?" he asked. No, Alpha. I serve in the lower halls." The lie tasted bitter. We'd been in the same territory for 22 years. Our paths had simply never crossed because my place was deliberately, carefully, far beneath his. He took a half-step closer. The scent of him intensified, and a strange, unwelcome heat bloomed low in my belly. My wolf, usually a quiet, cowed thing, stirred uneasily, pushing against my skin. "Mate," it whispered, a desperate, foolish sound. I shoved the feeling down, deep into the dark where I kept all my— "Jonah, there you are!" A smooth, rich voice interrupted the electric stillness. Benjamin, the pack's head enforcer and Jonah's closest friend, slid an arm around Jonah's shoulders. His smile was wide and white, but his amber eyes swept over me with a dismissive chill that instantly doused the strange heat. "The elders are waiting for your toast. Don't bother with the kitchen help." The spell broke. Jonah blinked, the intensity in his gaze shifting back to its usual distant authority. He gave me one last, lingering look, then allowed Benjamin to steer him away. Of course, just like that, I was invisible again. The noise of the hall rushed back in, a deafening wave. Joseph hissed in my ear. "What was that?" Trying to catch the Alpha's eye. "Know your place, girl, or you'll find yourself cleaning the kennels instead of the plates. Now move." I stumbled towards the kitchen, my legs weak. My heart was hammering against my ribs. What had just happened? He'd looked at me. He'd asked my name. The bond had screamed between us, a silent siren I was terrified he might have heard. In the steamy, clattering sanctuary of the kitchen, I leaned against a cold stone wall, trying to steady my breathing. Erica, the pack healer's apprentice and the closest thing I had to a friend, sidled up to me, her brows knitted with concern. She was all soft curves and gentle hands, a stark contrast to the hard lines of the warriors. "I saw that," she murmured, handing me a damp cloth. "Are you all right? You look like you've seen a ghost." "I think I am the ghost," I whispered, wiping my trembling hands. "He saw me, Erica. Jonah saw me." Her eyes widened. She understood the implication, the danger of it. In our world, an alpha's attention on a nobody like me was never a good thing. It drew eyes. It sparked questions. "What did he say?" he asked if we'd met. A hysterical laugh bubbled in my throat. "Where would the Alpha have met me? In the scullery." Erica's face was solemn. "Nina, your scent. It's changed just a little. Can you feel it?" I hadn't. I'd been too focused on his. But now, in the kitchen's smell of herbs and broth, I caught a new note on myself. Something deeper, richer, like the forest after rain. It was my wolf, roused from its long slumber. "Oh no," I breathed. "Exactly," Erica said. "You need to be careful. If Joseph or, moon forbid, Benjamin noticed." She didn't need to finish. Benjamin's cold glance had been a warning in itself. He was fiercely protective of Jonah, of the pack's hierarchy. An anomaly like me threatened that order. The rest of the feast passed in a blur of terror and strange, humming awareness. I could feel Jonah in the hall, a bright sun around which I was now helplessly orbiting. I avoided returning to the main hall, finding tasks in the shadowy passages, but the pull was a physical ache. It was near midnight when I finally slipped out into the kitchen gardens for a moment of air. The moon was a sharp sliver in the sky, a mockery of the full moon gatherings I was never allowed to attend in wolf form. My wolf was too weak, they said, a disgrace. I hugged my arms around myself, the cool air a relief. Couldn't sleep either. The voice came from the shadows of the old oak. I jumped, a small yelp escaping me. Jonah stepped into a patch of moonlight. He discarded his formal tunic and stood in a simple shirt, the sleeves rolled up. He looked younger but no less formidable. "Alpha, I was just getting air. I'll go." I turned to flee. "Wait." The command was softer this time, but no less effective. I froze. "Please." I turned back, every instinct screaming to run. He approached slowly, as if I were a skittish deer. "I owe you an apology," he said, stopping a few feet away. "For earlier, Benjamin was overzealous. You weren't blocking anything. It's fine, Alpha, it's my place." "Is it?" He tilted his head, studying me again. "You're Nina, orphaned. Parents were trackers, yes." I nodded. "You keep to yourself." It was a statement. "Why?" The question was too personal, too deep. "The pack is busy. I don't wish to be a burden." The practiced answer fell from my lips. He was silent for a long moment, just looking at me. The bond between us was a live wire, thrumming with energy. I saw his nostrils flare slightly, taking in my changed scent. His golden eyes darkened. "You don't smell like a burden," he said, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "You smell like—" He didn't finish. Instead, he took one final step, closing the distance between us. My breath hitched. The world narrowed to the space where the heat from his body almost touched mine. He raised a hand, slowly, and for a heart-stopping second, I thought he might touch my face. The sound of boots on gravel shattered the moment. "Jonah, there you are." Benjamin's voice was sharp, cutting through the night. He emerged from the path, his expression tight. "The patrol from the northern border has returned. They've found rogue scent. We need you." Jonah's hand fell. The intensity in his eyes shuddered, replaced by the focused alertness of an alpha. The moment was gone, crushed under the... "Of course." He gave me a last, unreadable look. "Go inside, Nina. It's not safe out here." He turned and followed Benjamin, who didn't even glance my way. I stood there, trembling, the place where his heat had almost touched me feeling suddenly, desperately cold. As they disappeared, I heard Benjamin's voice, low but clear on the wind. "Distracted lately, Jonah. First at the feast, now out here with a servant girl." Jonah's reply was a grumble I couldn't make out. But Benjamin's next words slithered through the dark to ice my blood. "Just remember your position. We can't have weakness. Not now. If something, or someone, is pulling your focus, it's a threat to the pack. And threats must be eliminated." I stood frozen in the moonlight, the fragile, terrifying hope that had sparked in the garden now completely doused, replaced by a primal, chilling fear. He didn't just see me now. Benjamin saw me, too, and he'd just declared me a threat. The silence after Benjamin's arrival in the garden was colder than the night air. I kept my eyes on the damp earth, feeling Jonah's gaze leave me like a physical severance. He turned, his shoulders squaring to face his beta. "Benjamin, this isn't a patrol route. My duties are wherever my alpha is." Benjamin's voice was smooth, but it carried an edge that made my skin prickle. "Especially when he's distracted in the dark with a kitchen girl." The words were meant for Jonah, but they lashed at me, branding me. Distraction, kitchen girl. I heard Jonah take a step, his boot crushing a fallen twig. "Watch your tone." "I'll watch more than my tone," Benjamin said, and I dared a glance up. He wasn't looking at Jonah anymore. He was looking directly at me, his amber eyes glowing faintly in the gloom. There was no threat in his expression. That was worse. It was a cold, factual assessment, like a hunter noting a rabbit in a snare. "The lower halls are being secured. Joseph is looking for his missing scullery maid. You should return to the hall, Alpha. The visiting envoys from the Stoneclaw Pack are asking for you." The dismissal of me was absolute. I was Joseph's problem, a piece of misplaced property. The fragile, terrifying connection of moments ago shattered under the weight of that reality. I was nothing again. My voice was a rasp. I didn't know who I was addressing. Both of them, neither. I took a stumbling step back, then another, my body moving on its own instinct to flee. Neither man stopped me. Jonah's head was tilted, listening to something I couldn't hear, his jaw tight. Benjamin simply watched me go, a silent sentinel ensuring the nuisance. I ran, not the graceful, powerful lope of a wolf, but the clumsy, frantic sprint of a human girl in worn shoes. The kitchen gardens blurred, then the stone archway of the lower halls swallowed me. The familiar sense of grease, herbs, and damp stone should have been a comfort. They felt like a cage. "There you are, you useless creature." Joseph's voice cracked like a whip across the empty scullery. He emerged from the shadow of the great hearth, his face mottled with anger. "Sneaking off during the feast? Think you're too good for your duties. Where have you been?" "I needed heir, head steward." I bent my head, my heart still hammering against my ribs from the run, from Jonah, from Benjamin's eyes. "Heir," he spat the word. "You'll get heir when I say you get heir. The Alpha himself was asking after you, caused a scene. Do you have any idea the trouble you've stirred up?" The irony was a bitter pill. The Alpha had asked for me, and that was the trouble. My very existence was now a problem. "I'm sorry. It won't happen again." "Damn right it won't," he snarled, grabbing my arm and shoving a heavy bucket of potato peelings into my hands. "You'll work through the night. Every pot, every pan, every floor in this wing. And if I see you slacking, if I catch you so much as looking toward the Great Hall again, you'll be on border scrub duty for a month. Now, get to work." The punishment was a relief. The mind-numbing, physical labor was a barrier against thought. I scrubbed until my fingers were raw and pruned, the repetitive motion a chant that drowned out the memory of Jonah's voice saying my name. But it couldn't drown out the new awareness inside me. It was a low hum, a thread of heat knotted behind my breastbone. I could feel him, not his thoughts, thank the moon, but a presence. A vast, quiet tension somewhere above me in the compound. The Alpha. I couldn't think it. The dawn was a gray smear at the high windows when Erica found me. I was on my knees, scouring the final flagstones of the pantry floor. She carried a healer's basket, and her face was pale with worry. "Nina, by the goddess, you look terrible." "Joseph's orders," I mumbled, sitting back on my heels. Every muscle screamed. "This isn't about Joseph." She knelt beside me, her voice dropping to a whisper. Her nostrils flared as she subtly scented the air around me. Her eyes widened. "It's stronger, much stronger. What happened in the garden?" I told her. The words tumbled out in a hushed, broken stream. Jonah finding me, the pull, the way the world narrowed to his eyes, and Erica listened, her expression growing graver with each word. When I finished, she let out a slow breath. "Benjamin sees it. He knows what the pull means, even if Jonah is still fighting it. The beta's first duty is to the pack's stability. A fated mate bond is powerful, but a bond with an orphaned servant? It would cause chaos, challenges, dissent." She looked at me, her kindness edged with fear. "He will see you as a threat to be neutralized." How do you neutralize a person? The question left my lips before I could stop it. Erica didn't answer with words. The grim silence was answer enough. She reached into her basket and pulled out a small, plain clay jar sealed with wax. This is a scent mask, a strong one. It's mostly mugwort and pine resin. It won't hide you from him if he's right in front of you, not with the bond awake, but it might blur your trail, make your ordinary scent less noticeable to others. She pressed it into my hand. Use it sparingly. And Nina, you need to leave. You have to get out of Silverfang territory. The finality of it stole my breath. Leave. The pack lands were all I'd ever known. The thought of the vast, wild forest beyond our borders, territory claimed by rogues or rival packs, was terrifying. Where would I go? Anywhere but here, she said urgently. There are neutral towns beyond the mountain pass. Humans, you could pass if you're careful. The thread in my chest gave a sudden, sharp tug. It wasn't painful, but it was insistent, a compass needle swinging north. My head jerked up instinctively toward the source, the direction of the Alpha's quarters. A wave of longing, so acute it felt like nausea, washed over me. Erica saw the bond, she whispered, horrified. It's growing. He's feeling it too, and it's calling you to him. You have to fight it. You have to go now. Panic, sharp and clean, cut through my exhaustion. She was right. Staying was suicide. Whether by Benjamin's order or the slow, maddening pull of a bond that could never be, my life here was over. I took the jar. Thank you, Erica, for everything. She pulled me into a fierce, brief hug. Be safe. Go out through the eastern game trail. I'll leave a food pack by the old blighted oak at the border marker. Now go. I didn't allow myself to think. Thinking would lead to feeling, and feeling would lead to that terrible, beautiful pull. I moved. I shoved the jar into my pocket, abandoned my scrubbing brush, and slipped into the network of deserted servant passages. My plan was simple. My tiny attic room held nothing of value, but I had a worn wool cloak and a leather water skin. I would grab them and run. The attic was silent, the other servants already at their morning duties. My pallet bed was a lump of rough blankets in the corner. I snatched my cloak from its peg and turned to find my water skin. The door clicked shut behind me. I froze. I hadn't heard anyone approach. Slowly, I turned. Beta Benjamin leaned against the closed door, his arms crossed over his broad chest. He filled the small space, making the attic feel like a coffin. He wasn't in his formal enforcer leathers, just simple trousers and a tunic, but he was no less intimidating. He looked around the cramped, bare room, his expression one of mild distaste. "So this is where you hide," he said. My mouth was dust. "Beta, I was just my duties." "Your duties are wherever I say they are," he said, echoing his words from the garden. He pushed off the door and took a single step forward. I pressed back against the cold stone wall. "You're a clever girl, Nina. You've survived this long, so you must understand the situation." I said nothing. My hand in my pocket clenched around the clay jar. The Alpha is unsettled, distracted. It's a dangerous state for a leader, especially with the Stoneclaw envoys here, testing our strength. This connection you seem to have provoked in him is a liability. He stopped a few feet away, his gaze boring into me. "I am the shield of this pack. I remove liabilities." "I haven't done any." "You exist," he stated simply. "And now you exist in a way that disrupts the natural order. An Alpha's mate is a Luna, a figure of strength and lineage, not a kitchen ghost." He studied my face, and I saw a flicker of something, not pity, but calculation. He would reject you, you know, eventually. When the novelty of the pull faded, reality would set in. The shame of it would eat at him. The pack would never accept you. The rejection would destroy you. It's a kinder thing, to remove the problem before it causes that pain. He was offering a justification. A cold, brutal mercy. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to give you a choice," Benjamin said. He reached into his own pocket and withdrew a small, clear glass vial. It held a dark, viscous liquid that seemed to swallow the faint light from the attic window. "This is wolfsbane extract, distilled and pure. It is painless. Quick. You will simply fall asleep and not wake up. Your heart will stop. It will look like a tragic accident, a foolish girl mistaking a poison for a remedy. Your suffering ends. The Alpha's distraction ends, and the pack remains." He held the vial out to me. "Or," he continued, his voice dropping to a deadly whisper, "I can make it not look like an accident. I can make it slow. I can make the entire pack watch as you are executed for treasonous seduction of the Alpha. Your friend, the healer's apprentice. She would be implicated for sure. Her fate would be yours." The world narrowed to that glass vial. The cold of the wall seeped through my cloak. The bond in my chest was a silent scream, a frantic pull toward the one person whose presence might stop this, but who was also the root cause of it. Jonah couldn't save me. He was the reason I needed saving. Benjamin's amber eyes were patient. He wasn't a monster in a rage. He was a surgeon with a scalpel, prepared to cut out an infection. To him, this was mercy. My fingers, numb and trembling, uncurled from the scent mask in my pocket. I looked from his impassive face to the deadly offering in his hand. And the door to the attic exploded inward. Splinters of wood rained down as the door was torn from its hinges. Framed in the shattered doorway, chest heaving, eyes blazing with a feral gold light, was Alpha Jonah. His gaze swept the room, taking in Benjamin, the small space, and me pressed against the wall. His scent, storm wind and oak, flooded the attic, overwhelming everything. The bond in my chest erupted into a conflagration of recognition and Benjamin had gone perfectly still, his hand closing around the vial, hiding it. His expression smoothed into one of mild concern. "Alpha, what is the meaning of—" Jonah didn't even look at him. His eyes were locked on me, wide with a panic I'd never seen in an Alpha. I felt a spike of terror, of finality. His voice was a guttural growl, laced with a possessiveness that shook the very air. He took a step into the room, his focus entirely on me. "What is happening here?" Benjamin moved subtly, positioning himself slightly between Jonah and me. "I was merely questioning the servant about her whereabouts last night, as her disappearance caused concern." She became hysterical. I found my voice, a thin, broken thing. He offered me a choice." Jonah's head snapped toward Benjamin. The air pressure in the room dropped. Benjamin held his Alpha's gaze, the careful mask slipping to reveal the steel beneath. "A choice to leave the pack for her own safety, for the pack's stability. You are not thinking clearly, Jonah. You are being driven by an instinct that is beneath you. Look at her. She is nothing." In a movement too fast to follow, Jonah had Benjamin by the throat, slamming him against the wall where I had just been standing. The vial flew from Benjamin's hand, shattering on the stone floor. A sharp, acrid smell. Wolfsbane filled the air. "She is mine," Jonah snarled, his face inches from his betas. The words were not a claim of ownership, but a primal, undeniable truth ripped from his soul. "You will not touch her. You will not look at her. You will breathe in her direction only with my leave. Do you understand?" Benjamin, even pinned and choking, did not look afraid. He looked betrayed. He managed a strangled whisper. "You choose a servant over your beta, over your pack." For a heartbeat, Jonah hesitated. The conflict was a visible storm on his face, duty, friendship, against the raw, screaming truth of the bond. His eyes flicked to me, to my terror, to the shattered poison on the floor. His grip tightened. "I am choosing." The word hung in the poisoned air, final and catastrophic. He released Benjamin, who slumped, gasping. Jonah turned to me, his expression shifting from fury to a desperate, bewildered intensity, and my stomach, twisted in knots of fear and adrenaline and the overwhelming surge of the bond, revolted. A wave of sickness rose, unstoppable. I doubled over, retching violently onto the floorboards, the meager contents of my stomach nothing but acid and bile. When I looked up, wiping my mouth, trembling, Jonah's face was etched with concern. But Benjamin, still leaning against the wall, catching his breath, was looking at me with dawning, horrified comprehension. His eyes were fixed not on my face, but on my midsection. His nostrils flared, scenting the air again, past the wolfsbane, past the fear. His whisper cut through the room, laced with a new kind of terror. Moon above, it's not just the bond. Your scent, it's changed. His eyes, wide with utter shock, met mine. You're pregnant. The scent of wolfsbane was still a bitter ghost in the air, but it was drowned now by the copper tang of blood and the ozone crackle of alpha rage. Benjamin's face, inches from mine, was a mask of pure, uncomprehending horror. His gaze was locked not on Jonah's snarling visage, but on my stomach. You're pregnant, he breathed, the words not a question, but the world tilted. My knees gave way, but I didn't hit the floor. Jonah's arm, still wrapped around me from when he'd shoved me behind him, tightened, holding me upright. His growl was a continuous, subsonic vibration that shook my bones. What did you say? Jonah's voice was barely recognizable. Stripped of all reason, Benjamin staggered back a step, his hand going to his bleeding neck where Jonah's claws had grazed him. His eyes, wide and shocked, flickered between Jonah's possessive grip on me and my own trembling form. The calculating beta was gone, replaced by a man staring at the collapse of his entire world. The sickness, the scent change beneath the masking potion, it's not just the bond. Benjamin's voice was hollow. She carries your heir, Jonah, and she was trying to flee with it. A new kind of silence descended, thicker and more terrible than before. Jonah's grip on me shifted. His hand, large and warm, slid from my arm to press flat against my lower abdomen, over my thin servant's dress. I flinched, a sob catching in my throat. His touch was not violent, but it was absolute, a claim that went deeper than skin or bone. A low, wounded sound escaped him, part growl, The reality of it, spoken aloud, crashed over me. The constant fatigue, the nausea that had plagued me for weeks, which I'd blamed on stress and poor food. The missed cycles I'd desperately ignored. Erica's worried looks. It wasn't just the mate bond making me ill. It was a life. A tiny, secret life growing inside me, conceived in the frantic, hidden pull of a bond neither. Jonah's head turned slowly toward me. His eyes, still blazing with amber fire, searched my face. Is it true? What was the point of lying? Benjamin had scented it. The truth was in the air, a new thread in the tangled web of our sense. I managed a tiny, jerky nod, tears spilling over. I expected fury, accusation. Instead, his expression fractured into something raw and agonized. The alpha mask shattered, revealing the man beneath. You were going to leave, he whispered. It wasn't an alpha's command. It was a broken realization. You were going to take my child and disappear. You were going to kill her, Jonah roared, swinging his attention back to Benjamin, the momentary vulnerability swallowed by renewed fury. You stood in my mate's den and offered her poison, while she carried my blood. To protect you, Benjamin shot back, finding his voice again, though it was ragged. To protect the pack. An unknown, low-born mate is a distraction. A pregnant one who hides it and plans to flee, she is a catastrophe waiting to happen. The Stoneclaw envoys will scent the instability a mile away. What happens when they challenge you, Jonah? When they sense your focus is divided? When they learn your heir was almost smuggled out like stolen goods? She is my mate, Jonah snarled, the words final and tectonic. This child is my heir. Your duty is to protect them, not orchestrate their deaths. My duty is to the pack's survival, Benjamin shouted. And right now, she is its greatest threat. Her very existence has made you attack your own beta. Look at us. They were at an impasse, two pillars of my world cracking under the strain of my secret. I was a stone thrown into still water, and the ripples were tearing them apart. The nausea returned, a sickening wave that had nothing to do with the pregnancy and everything to do with the devastating clarity in Benjamin's eyes. He was right. I had done this. Jonah seemed to come to a decision. The fighting tension left his shoulders, replaced by a terrifying calm. He kept his hand on my stomach, a constant, warm weight. Benjamin, leave now, go to the hall. Tell the Stoneclaws I am indisposed. Tell them anything. You will speak of this to no one. That is an order from your Benjamin's jaw worked. The wound on his neck was already clotting, a stark red line against his skin. The betrayal in his eyes was a physical thing. He had served Jonah his whole life, and now he was being dismissed over a kitchen servant. His gaze cut to me, and there was no horror left in it, only a cold promise of vengeance. Without another word, he turned and strode from the attic room, leaving the door hanging open on its broken hinge. The silence he left behind was deafening. Jonah's hand finally lifted from my stomach, only to cup my cheek, forcing me to look at him. His thumb brushed away a tear. The amber fire in his eyes had dimmed to a simmering glow. "How long have you known?" he asked, his voice quiet. "I didn't," I choked out. Not for sure. I thought I was just sick. From the bond." A flicker of pain crossed his face. "And the plan to run, that was your friend, the healer's apprentice." Panic seized me. Erica had nothing to do with it. She only helped me because I begged her. She was trying to save my life. "Please, Jonah, don't punish her. She's the only one who's ever been kind to me." I was babbling, clutching at the rough fabric of his tunic without realizing it. "SHHH," he murmured, pulling me gently against his chest. I stiffened, every instinct screaming that this was wrong, that this comfort was a trap. But my body traitorously responded to his. The constant, aching pull of the bond, which had been a source of terror, suddenly quieted, soothed by his proximity. The nausea receded. I went limp, too exhausted and overwhelmed to fight it. His scent, pine and snow and power, enveloped me, and for the first time since the bond awoke, it didn't frighten me. "I have been blind," he said into my hair, his voice a low rumble in his chest. "For years, I felt nothing, so I assumed there was nothing to feel. And then, in the garden, it was like waking from a dream where I was only half alive." He pulled back slightly, looking down at me. "I didn't know about the child, but I knew, from the moment I scented your fear tonight, that I would tear the world apart for you. I just didn't know Benjamin would be part of that world. He wants to protect you," I whispered, the truth bitter on my tongue. "He wants to control what he sees as a threat. He doesn't understand that you are my heart, outside my body. And this," his hand returned, resting gently over my abdomen. "This is my future, our future. You will not run, Nina. You will stay here with me." It wasn't a request. It was a decree. The Alpha was back, the momentary softness hardening into unyielding will. The comfort I'd felt curdled into a new kind of fear. Staying meant being at the center of a storm. It meant facing Benjamin's hatred, the pack's scrutiny, the political danger from the Stoneclaws. It meant belonging to Jonah in a way I had never wanted. "I can't stay in the servants' quarters," I said, a practical, desperate thought surfacing. "Joseph and the others, you will not set foot in the lower halls again," Jonah stated, as if the idea was offensive. "You are coming to the Alpha's wing. Now, but my things. You have nothing here you need," he said, his gaze sweeping the barren attic with a look of profound disgust, as if seeing it for the first time. This was where his mate had lived. This was what his pack had allowed. A fresh wave of anger radiated from him. He simply took my hand, his grip firm and inescapable, and led me from the room. Walking through the silent, sleeping servants' corridors with the Alpha was a surreal nightmare. We passed a late-night scullery maid carrying empty buckets. She took one look at us, at our joined hands and Jonah's fierce expression, and dropped into a deep curtsy, her eyes wide with terror. Jonah didn't even glance at her. He led me up a set of stone stairs I had only ever cleaned into the heart of the pack house. The air changed. It grew warmer, smelled of polished wood, hearth fires, and authority. We reached a heavy oak door guarded by 2 enforcers. They snapped to attention, their eyes widening almost comically as they saw me, disheveled and tear-stained, at their Alpha's side. "No one enters," Jonah commanded, his voice leaving no room for question. "Not even the beta. If Benjamin approaches, you tell him I will see him at the council meeting tomorrow. You do not let him pass." The enforcers nodded, sharp and military. "Yes, Alpha." Jonah pushed the door open and drew me inside, closing it firmly behind us and throwing a heavy bolt. I was in the Alpha's private chambers. A large fireplace dominated one wall, a low fire crackling within. Thick furs covered a massive bed. Books and maps were strewn across a heavy desk. The windows looked out over the moonlit territory. It was a space of power and solitude. And now I was trapped in it. Jonah released my hand and paced to the fireplace, running a hand through his dark hair. "You will be safe here. The guards are loyal to me." "Are they loyal to you?" I asked quietly. "Or to the pack? Benjamin is the beta. His word is law, second only to yours." He turned, his eyes sharp. "You think my guards would obey him over a direct order from me?" "I think they believe they are the same thing," I said, thinking of the absolute conviction in Benjamin's voice. "I think everyone does." He stared at me, and I saw the political reality dawning on him, complicating the simple, instinctive claim of the mate bond. He was Alpha, but he did not rule alone. He ruled through Benjamin, through the stewards, through the enforcers. I was a flaw in that machinery. A knock at the door, soft but insistent, made me jump. Jonah growled. "I said no one." "Alpha," a familiar, hesitant voice called through the wood. "It's Erica. Please, I need to see Nina. I need to know she's alive." My heart leapt. "Jonah, please." He studied me for a moment, then strode to the door, unbolting it and opening it just enough. Erica stood there, pale and shaking, a small healer's satchel in her hands. Her eyes found me over Jonah's shoulder, and she sagged with relief. "I heard there were rumors in the lower halls that the Alpha took a servant, that Benjamin was wounded." Her voice trembled. "I brought supplies for shock and for prenatal care." She said the last words carefully, her eyes flicking to Jonah. He stepped back, allowing her in. The moment the door was shut, Erica rushed to me, pulling me into a fierce hug. "You're alive, thank the moon." "She is under my protection now," Jonah said, his tone making it clear that this was both a promise and a warning. Erica let me go, giving him a respectful nod that didn't quite hide her fear. "Alpha, that is good." She turned back to me, her healer's mask slipping into place. "You've had a severe shock. And the pregnancy, it's early, but the stress." She began pulling vials from her bag. "I have a mild sedative. It will help you sleep. It's safe for the baby." Jonah watched like a hawk as she prepared a small dose. I drank it without protest, the liquid bitter and herbal. The sharp edges of my fear began to blur almost immediately. "She stays with you tonight," Jonah told Erica. "I have things to address. The guards will be outside." Erica nodded, helping me to the massive bed. I sank into the impossibly soft furs, my body finally giving out. Through heavy-lidded eyes, I saw Jonah approach. He leaned down, and for a heart-stopping moment, I thought he would kiss me. Instead, he pressed his lips to my forehead, a gesture so tender it made fresh tears well up. "Sleep, Nina," he murmured. "No one will harm you here, I swear it." He straightened, gave Erica one last, unreadable look, and left, bolting the door from the outside. The sedative pulled me down into a dark, warm sea. Erica sat on the edge of the bed, holding my hand. "The supplies are at the Blighted Oak," she whispered, her voice seeming to come from far away. "If you still need them." But it was too late for that. The door was bolted. The Alpha had claimed me. The die was cast. I woke to gray dawn light filtering through the windows. Erica was asleep in a chair by the dead fire. The sedative had left a woolly taste in my mouth and a dull ache behind my eyes. For a few blissful seconds, I didn't remember. Then it all crashed back. The baby, Benjamin's horror, Jonah's claim. I sat up slowly. A strange, deep-seated ache pulsed in my core, different from anything I'd felt before. It wasn't cramps. It was a hollow, wrong feeling. I swung my legs out of bed, and a warm trickle slid down my thigh. I looked down. A small, dark red stain bloomed on the pristine white fur of the Alpha's bed. My breath hitched. I stared, uncomprehending. Then another trickle and a sharp, twisting pain low in my belly made me gasp. Erica stirred, waking. "Nina, what's—" Her eyes followed my gaze to the stain. Her healer's senses snapped awake. She was across the room in an instant, her hands on my shoulders, her nose flaring as she scented the air. Her face, already pale, went ashen. "No," she whispered. The door bolt slid back. The door opened, and Jonah entered, looking weary but resolved. He had come to check on his claim, on his future. He stopped dead. His eyes took in the scene, me, trembling on the edge of the bed. Erica's horrified expression, the stark, red evidence on his furs, he scented it. The blood, the change, the life flickering out. The bond between us, that newly acknowledged tether, didn't just go quiet. It screamed. A wave of such profound, shattering agony ripped through the connection that it doubled me over. It wasn't my pain. It was his. Jonah didn't make a sound. He just stood there, as if turned to stone. His eyes, locked on mine, held a universe of loss. For the child he'd only just learned existed, and for the mate he now believed had, in the end, failed to hold on to it. But as the physical pain crested, a terrifying clarity cut through the bond's anguish. A cold, dark, silent void where his emotions had been. And through that void, carried on the broken bond, came a single, crystal-clear thought that was not my own. A thought of such venomous, perfect certainty it felt like a blade in my soul. She did this on purpose. The poison of his final thought lingered in the bond, a stain that wouldn't fade. She did this. My body was hollowed out, a vessel of blood and loss, but that accusation, that belief, was a new, deeper wound. I felt him recoil from me in spirit, even before I heard the outer chamber door slam. Silence followed, a thick, suffocating silence. I lay in the massive bed, the sheets stained and tangled, staring at the carved ceiling. The physical pain was a distant, throbbing echo compared to the psychic rupture. The fragile thread of understanding that had begun to weave between us had been severed, not by the miscarriage, but by his conclusion. He thought I had destroyed his heir. I don't know how long I lay there. The light through the high windows shifted from dawn's gray to a cold, clear morning. No one came, not Jonah, not Erica. The enforcers outside the door were silent statues. I was a prisoner in a room of gold and grief. Eventually, a basic, animal need drove me to move. I pushed myself up, every muscle protesting, and shuffled to the adjoining bathroom. I avoided the mirror. I didn't need to see the pallor, the shadows, the emptiness. I cleaned myself with trembling hands, the water feeling both scalding and insufficient. I found a simple linen shift in a wardrobe. None of my own clothes were here, and put it on. I stood in the center of the room, adrift. Then I felt it. A faint, tentative pulse through the bond. Not an emotion, not words, but a direction. A pull. He was nearby, and the bond, damaged as it was, still functioned like a compass needle. It pointed toward the outer chamber. Driven by a desperate, masochistic need to see the confirmation in his eyes, I went to the door. My hand hovered over the handle. Would it be locked? I turned it. The mechanism clicked, and the heavy door swung inward. The outer chamber was a space of formal receiving, all dark wood and trophies. And he was there. Jonah stood at the far window, his back to me, shoulders rigid. The morning light outlined him, but did not warm him. The air crackled with a tension so severe it made my teeth ache. He didn't turn. "You should be resting." His voice was flat, devoid of the possessive heat, the confused wonder, even the rage from last night. It was the voice of a stranger, a judge. "I couldn't," I whispered. My own voice was raw. "The healer said you need to recover your strength." He still didn't look at me. "She will return to check on you." "Erica," the healer's apprentice. Yes. He didn't use her name. He demoted her back to a title in his mind. A cold dread seeped into my bones. "Jonah!" Finally, he turned. His face was a mask of alabaster, his eyes like chips of frost-rimmed stone. There was no grief in them, only a furious, frozen calculation. The bond between us screamed with the dissonance. My hollow ache crashing against the healer confirmed it, he stated. A miscarriage brought on by extreme stress and physical exhaustion. He paused, his gaze pinning me to the spot. Or by other means. I flinched as if struck. Other means. You felt what happened. You felt the pain. I felt pain, he conceded, taking a single, slow step toward me. I felt loss, and then I felt a surge of something else. A bitter, acrid resolve. What was that, Nina? Was that your relief? Tears blurred my vision, hot and furious. It was agony. It was my child dying inside me. What resolve? What are you talking about? You never wanted this, he said, his voice dropping to a low, dangerous rumble. You hid from me. You hid the bond. You planned to run. Benjamin offered you a clean way out and you refused it, but that doesn't mean you accepted the alternative. A child would have tied you to me irrevocably. To this pack. To a life you clearly despise. His words were arrows, each finding a target. They twisted my fear, my survival instinct into a plot. I didn't know about the baby until last night. How could I have planned anything? There are herbs, he said coldly. Ways. The healer's apprentice is your friend. She has access. The accusation against Erica stole the breath from my lungs. No, never. She wouldn't. I wouldn't. She was trying to help me. She was the only one who ever did. And now there is no child, he stated, as if that were the final evidence. The potential heir is gone. The complication is removed. The bond remains, but it is damaged, weakened. That's what he felt. The miscarriage had torn something in the bond itself, leaving it raw and bleeding. He interpreted that damage as my sabotage. I lost everything, I said, the words tearing from my throat. Do you understand? I had nothing, and for one moment I thought I had something. And then it was gone. And you blame me for it. For a fleeting second, something flickered in his stone-cut eyes. A shard of doubt, of shared pain. The bond quivered, pushing my desolation toward him. But then his jaw tightened and the shutters came down. Benjamin's poison had done its work well. The beta had sown the seed of distrust, and the tragedy had allowed it to grow into a full, toxic tree. You will remain here, he declared, turning back to the window, dismissing me. You are my mate. That is a fact the pack must now accept. But you are not to leave these chambers. For your safety and for the stability of the pack. My safety? A hollow laugh escaped me. Or are you imprisoning the suspect? He didn't answer. The silence was confirmation enough. And Benjamin, I asked, my voice small. Banished from my presence, not from the pack. His duty remains. The words were clipped. He still trusted Benjamin's duty, if not his current judgment. He just no longer trusted me at all. I stumbled back into the bedroom, the door feeling heavier than stone as I closed it. Gilded prison, gilded cage. I was a trophy of a claimed mate and a suspected traitor. The two warring realities pressed in on me until I couldn't breathe. Erica came later that afternoon, escorted by two stern-faced enforcers I didn't recognize. They took position inside the outer chamber door, watching. "Nina," she breathed, her eyes wide with worry. She set her basket down and immediately reached for my wrist to check my pulse. Her hands were warm, a shocking contrast to the chill that had settled in my core. "He thinks I did it," I whispered, my gaze darting toward the guards. "He thinks you helped me." Her fingers stilled for a second, then continued their work, her face carefully neutral. "I know," she murmured, so low only I could hear. "He questioned me, extensively. He believes the stress of the confrontation caused it, but he is exploring other theories." Erica's lips thinned. "I told him the only herbs in your system were the ones I gave you for pain last night, and the general tonic for health I've been giving you for months. He didn't like that answer." She leaned closer, pretending to examine my eyes. "The guards at my quarters have been doubled. I'm being watched, too." My heart sank. "I'm so sorry, Erica." "Hush," she said firmly, but her eyes were frightened. "This changes nothing between us, but it changes everything for you. You cannot stay here." "He won't let me leave." "I know." She pressed a small, cool pouch into my hand, hiding it in the fold of my shift. "This is dried feverfew and willow bark, for pain and to help you sleep, nothing more. But they will search my basket on the way out. They cannot know I gave you anything." She spoke louder for the guards. "You must drink the broths they bring. Rest is essential. Your body has suffered a great shock." I clutched the pouch, a tiny token of rebellion and care. "Thank you." She packed her things, her movements slightly clumsy under the guard's scrutiny. As she turned to leave, she gave me a last long look. It wasn't just concern. It was a warning. The days bled into one another. A silent, efficient servant, never anyone I recognized, would bring bland food and take away the trays. The guards changed shifts with mechanical precision. Jonah did not come back into the bedroom. I would sometimes feel him in the outer chamber, a brooding, turbulent presence through the bond. The bond itself was a sickly thing. Where once there had been a pull of magnetism, now there was only a thin, painful wire connecting us, transmitting a low-frequency hum of mistrust and a constant, echoing ache from my side. I could feel his turmoil, his struggle between the instinct of the mate and the conviction of the betrayed alpha. It was a war he was fighting silently, and I was the battlefield. On the fourth night, the routine broke. I was lying awake, staring at the dark when I heard raised voices in the outer chamber. Jonah's, a low thunder, and another Benjamin's. My blood turned to ice. He was supposed to be banished from here. I slid from the bed and crept to the door, pressing my ear against the cold wood. "Cannot ignore this, Jonah." Benjamin's voice was strained but vehement. "The Stoneclaw envoys are asking pointed questions. They smell the weakness. They feel the discord in the pack bond. Your focus is shattered." "My focus is where it needs to be," Jonah growled. "On a servant who may have killed your child." Benjamin shot back, and I heard a snarl, the sound of a shove. "You will not speak of her." Jonah's voice was deadly quiet. "Someone must. The pack is whispering. They say the Alpha is spellbound by a low-born witch who destroyed his heir. They are losing faith. My enforcers report unrest in the lower halls. Joseph is fanning the flames, saying her rise was an abomination and her fall is divine justice. You need to address them. You need to show strength, or I will." The threat hung in the air. "You will do nothing," Jonah said, but his voice lacked its absolute certainty. "I am your beta," Benjamin insisted, a pleading note entering his tone. "Your friend. I am trying to save you from yourself. End this. Reject the bond formally. Cast her out. Let the pack see you are free of her influence. It is the only way to heal the rift." A long, terrible silence followed. I stopped breathing. The bond went utterly still, waiting. "Leave," Jonah said finally, the word exhausted. "Do not return to this wing until I summon you." I heard retreating footsteps, heavy with frustration. Then only silence. But the seed Benjamin had planted this time was not just in Jonah's mind. It was what I'd wanted before. Freedom. Escape. Now it was my only possible survival. Jonah's protection was now a cage, and his faith in me was broken. The pack's hatred was simmering, stirred by Joseph and given permission by Benjamin's open hostility. I was a dead woman, waiting in a golden room. The plan formed from sheer desperation. It had to be tonight. The guards were bored, complacent after days of quiet. Jonah was distracted, his will divided. And Benjamin's ultimatum meant things were about to get much. I waited until the deep watch of the night. I put on the dark linen shift, my only clothing. I took the small pouch Erica had given me and tied it to a strip of torn sheet. I had no supplies, no map, no ally waiting at a blighted oak. I had only the direction of the bond, which I would have to run directly away from. With a deep, shuddering breath, I turned the handle and slipped into the outer chamber. It was empty, the fireplace embers casting a faint glow. The main door to the corridor was my goal. As I tiptoed across the rug, a floorboard creaked. I froze. The door to Jonah's private study, which I had never seen open, swung inward. He stood there, silhouetted by the low light of a single lamp behind him. He wasn't dressed for sleep. He looked as though he hadn't slept for days. His eyes found me instantly, glowing faintly in the dark. "Going somewhere?" he asked, his voice a quiet rasp that vibrated through the wounded bond. My heart hammered against my ribs. I was caught. The sheer, hopeless terror of it locked my limbs. He took a step forward, and the light fell on his face. The cold mask was gone. In its place was a raw, agonized conflict that mirrored the chaos in the bond. He looked from my face to the door behind me, understanding dawning. "You were running," he stated. Not a question. The betrayal in his voice was fresh, sharp. It confirmed all his worst suspicions. "Jonah, please," I begged, the words barely audible. He closed the distance between us in 2 swift strides. His hand came up, and I flinched, expecting violence. But his fingers only brushed my cheek, a touch so fraught with confusion and pain it was worse than a blow. "Why?" The word was torn from him. "After everything, why run from me?" He was asking about tonight. But I heard the larger question, why destroy our child? I had no answer that would reach him. The bond was too damaged, too clouded with poison. I saw the moment his anguish hardened back into certainty. My flight was my confession. His hand dropped. The vulnerability vanished, replaced by a grim, decisive resolve. It seems Benjamin was right. Some bonds are too broken to keep. He turned his head toward the main door and raised his voice, cold and clear. "Guards, take her to the cells." The word hung in the air, a death sentence whispered through the heavy oak door. Cast. He was going to cast me out. Or worse. I stood frozen in the dim corridor, the empty tray in my hands a flimsy shield against the future Benjamin was carving for me. I didn't wait to hear Jonah's reply. My feet carried me silently back to the prison of his chambers, my heart a frantic drum against my ribs. Cast. It was what I wanted, wasn't it? To be away from this gilded cage, from his hatred, from the pack's venom. But the way Benjamin said it didn't sound like exile. It sounded like disposal. The silent servant came with my evening meal. I didn't touch it. The smell of roasted meat turned my stomach. I paced, the luxurious rugs swallowing the sound of my steps. The bond was a dull, persistent ache in my chest, a corroded wire. I could feel nothing from Jonah but a distant, cold tension. He was deciding my fate right now, just a few rooms away, with the man who had already tried to kill me once. Sleep was impossible. I sat by the cold fireplace, wrapped in a blanket, watching the moon trace its path across the high window. The memory of my daughter's tiny, lost presence was a fresh wound, made more agonizing by his belief that I had thrown her away. I would have given anything for her, anything. A key turned in the lock just before dawn. I shot to my feet, the blanket falling away. It wasn't the silent servant. The door opened, and Jonah stood there. He was alone. He looked as though he hadn't slept either, shadows like bruises under his eyes, but his expression was carved from granite. The bond shrieked with a sudden, sharp pain, a feedback loop of his resolve and my terror. "Come," he said, his voice devoid of all warmth. "Where?" My own voice was a rasp. "You are leaving these chambers." A flicker of wild, desperate hope. He was casting me out. He was letting me go. I took a hesitant step forward. He didn't reach for me, just turned and walked into the corridor, expecting me to follow. I did, my bare feet silent on the stone. But we didn't turn toward the main entrance or the servants' passages. He led me deeper into his wing, down a narrow, spiraling staircase I had never seen. The air grew colder, damper. The walls changed from finished wood to rough-hewn stone. We were going underground. The hope curdled into dread. At the bottom of the stairs was a short corridor with 3 heavy, iron-bound doors. The cells. This was the Pack's detention block, a place for traitors and rogues awaiting judgment. He stopped before the center door, produced another key, and swung it open. The hinges screamed, and the room inside was small, maybe 10 paces across. A narrow cot with a thin mattress was bolted to one wall. A bucket sat in the corner. A single, barred window high up on the far wall let in a sliver of gray pre-dawn light. It smelled of mildew and despair. "You will remain here until a formal judgment can be made before the full Pack Council," Jonah stated, his back to me as he looked into the cell. "The unrest Benjamin spoke of cannot be ignored. Your presence has become a poison." "My presence," the words tore out of me. "You brought me here, you locked me in your rooms. I didn't ask for any of this." He finally turned to look at me, and the pain in the bond spiked again, a mixture of his anger and my own. "You carried my child. You lost my child. The how and why of it is what the council will determine." "You've already determined it," I whispered, the fight draining out of me, replaced by a cold, heavy certainty. "You think I killed her." His jaw tightened. "The evidence suggests a deliberate act. The healer confirmed the herbs in your system were not mine. Someone gave them to you. You took them." Erica's face flashed in my mind. The little pouch of moonleaf she'd given me for pain, for sleep. I had used it. He must have smelled it on me in my blood. To him, it wasn't comfort. It was proof. "I took them for the pain," I said, but it sounded feeble even to my own ears. "You will have time to present your case to the council," he said, as if discussing a minor border dispute. He stepped aside, gesturing into the cell. "Go in." I didn't move. "And if the council believes you, what then?" His eyes, those gold-flecked eyes that had once burned with a different kind of fire, were flat. "Then you will be dealt with according to Pack law, for endangering the Alpha's line, for treason. Death. It would be a death sentence. A public one. The finality of it broke something loose inside me. A survival instinct I didn't know I still possessed. I wasn't waiting for a trial. I wasn't dying for a crime I didn't commit. I took a step forward, not toward the cell, but toward him. I let my shoulders slump, my head bow, playing the defeated Omega. I saw the slight, almost imperceptible relaxation in his stance. He thought I was submitting. As I drew level with him, in the doorway between the corridor and the cell, I moved. I dropped low and shoved forward with all my strength, not at him, but at the heavy oak door. It swung violently inward on its screaming hinges, crashing into Jonah where he stood beside it. It wasn't a powerful blow, but it was unexpected. It knocked him off balance, his shoulder slamming into the stone door jamb with a grunt of surprise. I didn't look back. I ran. I flew up the spiraling stairs, my bare feet slapping on the cold stone. I heard his roar of fury behind me, the sound echoing up the stairwell like a beast unleashed. The bond erupted into a wildfire of rage and pursuit. It fueled my terror, told me exactly how close he was. I burst out into the main corridor of his wing. It was empty. Dawn was still only a suggestion. I sprinted for the servants' passage I'd used days before, the one that led down to the kitchens and, hopefully, to the eastern game trail. I could hear his footsteps now, heavy and fast, gaining. I hit the narrow servants' door, yanked it open, and plunged into the dark, cramped passageway. Here I had an advantage. I knew these tunnels. He was Alpha. He probably hadn't set foot in them since he was a pup. I took turns at random, my breath sobbing in my chest, trying to mute the bond's screaming directions that seemed to pull him right toward me. I found a laundry chute, a narrow, slick stone channel used to send linens down to the washrooms. Without a second thought, I climbed in and let go. I slid down in a terrifying rush of darkness, banging my elbows and knees, and tumbled out onto a pile of dirty sheets in a dim, soap-scented room. The laundry. It was deserted at this hour. I crawled out, listening. I couldn't hear him. The bond was a chaotic storm, but the direct line of pursuit had faded. He'd lost my trail, for now. Shaking, I grabbed a discarded drying cloth and wrapped it around my shift, covering my distinctive servant's dress. I shoved my feet into a pair of too large clogs left by a wash tub. Then I saw it, on a shelf near the door. A small, sharp paring knife, left behind from mending or peeling. I snatched it, the cool handle a pathetic comfort in my hand. I slipped out of the laundry into the lower kitchens. The great hearths were cold. I moved like a ghost, from shadow to shadow, toward the postern door that led to the kitchen gardens. The same gardens where he'd found me that day, where this had all truly begun. The door was bolted, but from the inside. My trembling fingers worked the heavy iron bolt free. It slid back with a soft clunk. I paused, listening with every fiber of my being. Nothing but the distant call of an early bird. I pulled the door open, just enough to slip through, and stepped out into the chill morning air. Freedom, it was a terrifying, vast thing. I was outside the great hall, but I was still deep within Silverfang territory, and every wolf here would howl for my blood if they saw me. I had to get to the blighted oak. Erica's promised supplies were my only chance. Keeping to the tree line, I ran. The clumsy clogs fell off, I left them. The rough ground cut my feet, but the pain was nothing. The bond was a constant, low-grade alarm in my chest, a compass pointing back toward the source of my torment. I used it, moving in the opposite direction, feeling the faint, sickening pull weaken with every step I took away from him. I found the blighted oak just as the sun crested the mountains, its twisted, leafless form a stark silhouette against the brightening sky. My heart leapt. Tucked in a hollow at its roots was a small, oilskin-wrapped bundle. I fell to my knees, scrabbling at it. Inside was a note in Erica's hurried script, a water skin, a hunk of hard cheese, a strip of dried meat, and bless her, a pair of sturdy leather boots and a thick woolen cloak. There was also a small, plain wooden box. I opened it. Inside, nestled in cotton, was a vial of clear liquid and a tiny, dried, silvery flower. Moon blossom, the key component in the bondbreaker potion. Nina, go east. Follow the river once you cross the pass. Don't stop. Don't look back. This is all I could get. The flower is from my private stash. It's not enough for the full potion, but it's a start. I'm so sorry. Be safe. E. Tears blurred my vision. She had risked everything. I shoved the supplies into the oilskin, tied it into a makeshift pack, and pulled on the boots and cloak. They were heaven. I took one last look back at the distant spires of the Great Hall, my home and my hell for my entire life. Then I turned and ran into the deep forest, toward the mountain pass. The journey was a blur of fear and exhaustion. I avoided paths, moving by sun and instinct, the bond my only guide to what I was fleeing. By midday, I reached the foothills of the pass. The terrain grew steeper, rockier. My lungs burned. I drank sparingly from the waterskin, forcing down bites of the cheese. It was as I was picking my way along a steep scree slope, the entrance to the pass a narrow defile ahead, that I heard the first howl. It was distant but unmistakable, a hunting cry. It was answered by another closer. My blood turned to ice. They'd found my trail. They were coming. I scrambled up the slope, rocks skittering out from under my boots. The bond suddenly writhed, a violent, pulling agony. He was with them. Jonah was leading the hunt. Panic gave me wings. I reached the defile and plunged into the shadowy pass. The cliffs rose sheer on either side. I had to get through. I had to reach the other side, the unclaimed lands, where a wolf's claim meant nothing. I ran until my legs gave out, stumbling and falling against the rough stone wall. I could hear them now, the sounds of pursuit echoing in the canyon, shouts, the scrabble of claws on rock. They were in the pass. Despair washed over me. They were faster, stronger. They would catch me. I pushed off the wall, forcing myself to move, my breath coming in ragged, tearful gasps. Ahead, I saw light. The end of the pass, just 100 more yards. A roar shook the very air, vibrating in my bones. It wasn't a howl, it was pure, primal fury. Nina! Jonah, he was close, so close. I burst out of the mouth of the pass into a wide, rocky basin. Freedom, but there was no cover. I was exposed. I looked frantically for the river Erica mentioned, a path to follow. I saw it, a silver ribbon glinting far below in a distant valley. It was miles away, across open, barren rock. I was trapped. I turned. He stood at the mouth of the pass, silhouetted against the dark rock. He was alone for the moment, having outdistanced his enforcers. His chest was heaving, his eyes blazing with that terrifying gold light. The bond was a physical tether now, yanking at my core, demanding submission. "There is nowhere left to run," he snarled, his voice guttural. My back was to the cliff edge of the basin. Below was a steep, deadly drop onto jagged rocks. I fumbled in my oilskin pack, my fingers closing around the small wooden box. I pulled it out, clutching it to my chest. He took a step forward, then another, his predator's grace in full force. "You will come back. You will face your judgment." "I've already been judged by you," I cried, my voice breaking. "You found me guilty the moment you felt that pain." He flinched, but his advance didn't stop. "The council will hear you. They'll hear what you tell them to hear," I shouted. The howls of the other wolves were getting louder, echoing from the pass. They would be here in moments. I looked at the box in my hands, the incomplete bond breaker. The moonblossom was useless without the other ingredients, without the ritual. It was just a flower, but the vial, the clear liquid. It wasn't part of the potion. I knew what it was, Erica's other gift, a mercy, a quick, painless poison. She had given me a choice she thought I might need. Jonah saw the box. He saw my tears. His steps slowed, confusion cutting through the rage on his face. "What is that? What are you doing?" The first of the enforcers, Benjamin at their head, erupted from the pass behind Jonah. Benjamin's eyes locked on me, cold and triumphant. He had his verdict. He had his quarry cornered. I looked at Jonah, my fated mate, the father of my dead child, my jailer and my hunter. I felt the bond, that beautiful, terrible, broken thing, tying me to him forever with chains of agony and mistrust. I made my choice. I popped the cork from the vial with my thumb. "You want to be free of your poison, Alpha," I said, my voice suddenly calm. "So do I." His eyes widened in understanding, in horror. "Nina, no." He lunged, a blur of motion. I tipped the vial to my lips and swallowed. The world tilted, then shattered into a brilliant, silent white. The last thing I saw was Jonah's face, his roar of denial swallowed by the ringing in my ears. Then, nothing. A vast, weightless nothing. I did not expect to, but I did. Consciousness returned not with a jolt, but as a slow, cold seep into my bones. I was lying on stone, wet stone. The roar was not silence, but water, a thunderous, cascading rush that filled the air with a fine, cold mist. I pushed myself up onto my elbows, my body screaming in protest. Every muscle ached, a deep, bruised pain, but the sharper, more specific agonies. The twist in my ankle from the run, the raw scrape on my palm, were muted, distant. As if wrapped in, I looked at my hands. They were mine, pale and shaking. But the bond was gone. The constant, painful wire that had connected my soul to Jonah's, humming with his fury, his suspicion, his bitter grief, had been severed. In its place was a hollow silence so profound it was dizzying. I took a shuddering breath, and it was my own. The pack sense, the low-level awareness of the others that had been the background noise of my entire life, had vanished. I was utterly, terrifyingly alone. I was also alive. I scrambled to my feet, slipping on the slick rock. I stood in a shallow, rocky basin at the base of a sheer cliff. A waterfall plunged from the heights above, the one I had intended to jump from, into a churning pool that fed a fast-moving stream. The vial, it hadn't been poison. Erica's note, the one I hadn't had time to read, I fumbled in the pocket of the cloak, my fingers numb. The empty vial was there, and a sodden, folded piece of parchment. With trembling hands, I smoothed it open under the dim light filtering through the mist. "Nina, the moonblossom is for the bond breaker, should you ever need to protect another as you once planned. The vial is a veiled draft. It will not kill you. It will mimic death for a few hours, slowing your heart, cooling your skin, and sever all magical ties, including the mate bond, for a time. It is temporary. The bond may reassert itself, but it will give you a head start if you are strong enough to run when you wake. Go east, follow the river. There is a human trading post 3 days downstream. Do not look back, be free." Temporary, the word struck me like a physical blow. This reprieve, this silence was borrowed. Jonah would have felt it too. He would have felt the bond snap. What had he thought when I fell? When my heart seemed to stop? I looked up at the cliff. I could see no one on the ledge above through the spray and the gathering dark. But they would come. They would find a way down or circle around. Benjamin would want to confirm the kill. Jonah, I didn't know what Jonah would want now. I had to move. The veil draft had left me weak and disoriented, but the pervasive dread was gone. My thoughts were my own. I drank deeply from the icy stream, the water clearing my head. Then, orienting myself by the waterfall, I turned east and began to follow the riverbank. The forest beyond the pass was ancient and dense, nothing like the managed woods of Silverfang territory. I walked through the night, the sounds of the wilderness a strange new language. Without the pack sense, every rustle was a potential threat, every shadow a separate entity. I was a lone wolf in truth now, and the instinct to hunt. By dawn, I found a hollow beneath the roots of a massive fallen tree. I crawled inside, wrapped Erica's cloak tightly around me, and slept a dead, dreamless sleep. For 3 days, I followed the river. I ate the last of the food from the bundle, then foraged for berries and roots, my old knowledge from the kitchen gardens serving me in this new, wild place. The silence within me was a gift. I could grieve for my lost child without the echo of Jonah's amplified pain poisoning my own. I could feel my fear without it being compounded by his rage. It was a clean, if terrible, solitude. On the afternoon of the third day, the river widened, and the smell of wood smoke and cooked meat carried on the breeze. I crept to the edge of the tree line. Below, in a cleared area by a wider, slower part of the river, was a settlement. A rough wooden palisade surrounded a handful of log buildings. Human voices, loud and unconcerned, floated up to me. The trading post. My heart hammered against my ribs. This was the threshold. Out here, I was a rogue wolf, vulnerable. In there, among humans, I would be something else. A stranger, a woman with no past, if I could hide what I was. I waited until full dark. Using the last of my courage, I approached the main gate. A man on watch, human, with a thick beard and a crossbow cradled in his arms, eyed me with suspicion. "State your business." My voice was rough from disuse. I seek work and shelter." He looked me up and down, taking in my worn dress, Erica's cloak, my bare, scratched legs. "Runaway, eh? From one of the mountain clans." I just nodded, lowering my eyes. He grunted. "Talk to Mara at the common house. She might have scullery work. No trouble, you hear? We don't abide trouble here." The common house was warm, bright, and overwhelmingly loud with human emotions. Simple, surface-level things like irritation, amusement, weariness. It was a relief. Mara, a sharp-eyed woman with a kind smile, gave me a bowl of stew and a corner in the attic to sleep in exchange for washing pots. For a week, I lived in a bubble of mundane exhaustion. My hands were raw from hot water and lye soap. My back ached from the cot, but I was invisible. I was Nina, the quiet new girl. The hollow silence inside me began to feel less like a wound and more like a scar. I started to believe, foolishly, that I had outrun my fate. Then, on the 7th night, I dreamt. It was not a memory, nor a fear. It was the bond. A faint, distant tug like a fishhook lodged deep in my soul. I woke in the dark attic, sweating, my hand pressed to my chest. The silence was gone. In its place was a faint, discordant hum. Jonah. He was alive. The bond was reweaving itself across the miles, seeking its other half. Panic, pure and cold, washed over me. He would find me. It was only a matter of time. The veil draft had given me a week's grace, no more. I left before dawn, stealing from the common house only a heel of bread and a small knife from the kitchen. I took nothing else. I melted back into the forest, but now the direction was unclear. East was the human world, but the bond was a compass needle pointing relentlessly back west, toward the mountains, toward him. I became a ghost in the woods. I avoided all paths, all signs of settlement. I moved at night, slept hidden by day. The bond grew stronger, a constant, aching pressure. It was different now. The fury had burned down to a cold, relentless ember. The grief was still there, but beneath it was something new, a focused, obsessive determination. He was hunting, and he was getting. A fortnight after I fled the trading post, I knew he was in the same forest. I could feel his proximity like a storm on the horizon. I had circled back, unintentionally, toward the mountains. I found myself in a high, rocky clearing, a place of windswept stone and stunted trees. The moon was full, painting the world in silver and black. I could run no further. I stood in the center of the clearing, waiting. The bond was a live wire again, vibrating with his nearness. I didn't have to wait long. He emerged from the tree line alone. Jonah. He looked older, the lines on his face carved deeper by something more than anger. His eyes, those gold-flecked eyes that had once looked at me with bewildered possession, now held only a grim, unyielding resolve. He wore no Alpha's finery, just simple travel clothes, but his authority was a palpable force. "Nina!" My name, Alpha. My voice was steady, though my knees trembled. "The bond has returned," he said, taking a step forward. "You cannot hide from it or from me." "I am not hiding," I said. "I am choosing, and I choose not to go back. You are my mate." The words were flat, stripped of any passion, a simple declaration of what he saw as fact. "You carry a death sentence from the Pack Council. Your place is with me, to face that sentence or to have it commuted by my will. To be your prisoner again, to be the Pack's whipping boy for your grief." I shook my head. "You believed I killed our child. You will always believe that. There is no place for me there." A flicker of something crossed his face, doubt, pain, I couldn't tell. It was gone in an instant. "The bond does not lie. What I felt. What you felt was my pain." The cry was torn from me. "It was my body breaking. It was my loss. You felt it and called it guilt. You took my grief and made it my crime." He was silent for a long moment, the wind whipping between us. "Benjamin has been stripped of his rank," he said finally, as if offering a concession. "For acting against my mate, for threatening you. It meant nothing. And will you strip the whole pack of their rank for hating me? Will you lock them all in cells for whispering that I'm a witch? You cannot protect me from what I am to them. A mistake. A stain. You are my mate," he repeated, but the words had lost their force. He was arguing with a ghost, with the idea of what should have been. "And what does that mean?" I asked, the fight leaving me, replaced by a weary finality. "You cast me away the moment it was convenient. You only claimed me when the bond forced your hand. That is not a fate. That is a curse. One I will not live under any more." I saw his hand tighten at his side. "I will not let you go. You have to." I reached into the pocket of my cloak, my fingers closing around the last thing Erica had given me. The moonblossom flower, dried and carefully preserved. The final ingredient. Because I would rather be nothing than be yours on your terms. His eyes tracked my movement. "What are you doing?" "What I should have done the moment I knew what I was to you," I whispered. I brought the flower to my lips. The bond-breaker potion required ritual, brewing, specific incantations under a moon. But at its heart, it was about will. A mother's will to protect her child from a terrible legacy. My child was gone. Now I would protect myself. I crushed the dry petals in my fist and swallowed their bitter dust. Jonah lunged forward. No, it was not like the veil draft. There was no white silence, no gentle numbness. This was violence. It was a surgery performed on the soul without anesthetic. I felt the bond, that golden, terrible thread, not snap but unravel. It was woven into every memory, every cell, every dream I'd had since I first saw him in the Great Hall. Tearing it out was an agony beyond anything I had ever known. I screamed, falling to my knees on the cold stone. Across from me, Jonah cried out too, a raw animal sound of shock and loss. He staggered, clutching his chest. The process seemed to take an eternity, but it could only have been seconds. When it was over, I was on the ground, gasping, empty. The silence was back, but this time it was different. It was not a temporary hollow, but a permanent, sealed vault. The connection was gone, not severed, but annihilated. Where it had been, there was only a smooth, cold scar. I looked up. Jonah was staring at me, his face ashen. The certainty, the Alpha's command, was gone from his eyes. He looked bereft, hollowed out. "What have you done?" His voice was a broken thing. "I have set us both free," I rasped, pushing myself up. The world seemed clearer, sharper, and utterly indifferent. He was just a man now. A powerful, dangerous man, but no longer the other half of my soul. He took a step toward me, then stopped, as if hitting an invisible wall. He could feel it too, the nothingness where the bond had been. His hand reached out, not in command, but in a futile, bewildered gesture. "Nina!" "Goodbye, Jonah." I turned and walked away, into the trees on the far side of the clearing. He did not follow. I could feel his gaze on my back until the forest swallowed me, but the tether was gone. He could not find me now, not by the bond. I walked east toward the rising sun, toward an unknown future. I was no one's mate, no one's servant, no one's pack. I was Nina alone. The bond breaker I carried had destroyed everything. The love that never was, the child lost, the Alpha's certainty, the pack's order. From those ruins, I carried only one thing forward: myself. And that, for the first time in my